Okay, how about now? How about now? Yeah, I think there's voice now. Okay, I can definitely see all the things jumping. Okay, let me know if you guys can hear me. Can you guys hear me? I think I've I've switched my inputs to a different one. Can you guys hear my voice? So I'll keep on chatting, but if you could paste in the comments and let me know. Okay, cool. So all right, cool. Yeah. Anyways, so here we are. So the way this I'll just skip to the housekeeping. So folks, until 6 p.m. London time, we're going to be answering all of your questions about behavioral interviews at Amazon. So if you want your question answered, please type your question in the chat box. Make sure to either keep it short, but if your question is long, the chat box has some sort of limit in terms of characters. So just split it into multiple parts. So do part one, part two, part three, like you would do with a Twitter thread, and then we will pick up your multi-part question from kind of down below. So don't worry, if you have a multi-parter, we're going to address it in one go. So I'm going to bring your questions up here on the screen, and Gigi and I both will put our heads together to help you out. Now, while you guys are thinking about your questions, one thing to note is that we are experts in all things behavioral interviews at Amazon based on Amazon's core competencies, which are the 16 leadership principles. Unfortunately, we are not experts on any functional or technical assessments because both Gigi and I were marketers at Amazon. And as you might know, there are thousands of job families at Amazon, and it's impossible to be experts on all of them. But behavioral interviews are more or less uniform. So if you have a question, tell me about it. Sorry, if you have a question, um, I have an interview for a data center construction manager next week. Do you have any tips? Unfortunately, for behavioral part, yes. So for the behavioral part, yes, we'll have some tips. But for the data construction, any technical functional questions relating to constructing data centers, we don't have. But otherwise, anything else goes. So first things first, I'm just gonna also bring up some shout outs as well. So this one is coming from Lewis. So Lewis says, hi, wanted to say thanks to both of you. Today is my first day at Amazon, and all thanks to day one. Wow, this is amazing, Lewis, and very, very happy that things worked out and we were able to be part of your journey. That is what drives Gigi and myself, to be honest, is hearing stuff like this. Hope you have a long and prosperous career at Amazon. But let's keep going, folks. So if you have a question, post it in the chat box. No question is a bad question. If your question is a bit too generic, we'll send you to the YouTube channel. If your question is specific, we will try to do our best to answer. So here's a question from someone joining on Gigi's LinkedIn page. Hello. So the question is, what is the average prep time for a loop? So this really depends on all the candidates. As you can imagine, different candidates come at different stages of prep. Some have done some prep, some haven't. If you're just starting anew, and I guess if you're prep, if your learning ability in terms of learning new material is that of an average candidate, then I would say it's probably between a week to a week and a half. That's based on our experience. But I have seen folks managing to crack the entire prep routine in less than a week. Some folks decided to take more time. The more time, the better. But if you're thinking about when to schedule your loop, then I would say something between a week to a week and a half tends to work for most candidates. And this assumes that you're investing in our paid resources. So something like Amazon Interview Success System, which gives you both the theory and the practice, and you do your day job. So you study on top of a day job and family responsibilities. 1 to 1.5 weeks tends to work for everyone. Okay. So folks, keep your questions going, and I see Gigi is joining already. Hello, Gigi.
Hi, sorry, I'm late.
Gigi is here, and so we've just spoken about the average prep time that it takes candidates to prepare for a loop, and we generally recommend between a week to a week and a half. So that is something that we've already covered. And
Cool.
we've got Lewis here, Gigi, who came to say thank you. I'm just gonna pull up his little thank you here. Who's it's the
I
first day of
remember that.
Amazon.
I remember the cat.
Yes, there you go.
Hey, Lewis. Congratulations. Hope it went
Congratulations
well.
indeed. But folks, let's keep those questions going. So post your questions into the chat box. So there's one here coming from Clark, and that is, do you charge for the initial virtual meeting? Gigi, I think this is a question about how we price our coaching sessions. Do you want to take that one, seeing as we haven't got any more questions
Okay,
to
yeah.
answer?
So, yeah, Clark, we don't do an initial virtual meeting. The way our coaching works is you'll find that we're pretty low range in terms of our pricing. We try and offer the very best value for money. We're not the type of coaches that are going to be charging you $1,000, $2,000 for a package, etc. So what we try and do in order to be able to price at that level for our clientele is we have loads of FAQs all over our website that explains exactly what you get from our service. And then if you require something else, you're absolutely free to reach out to us on our support email address, which is support@dayone.careers, and ask us questions. Our experience is that we have almost never, as far as I can tell, been failed to satisfy a client's queries around how our service works over email. I don't think I've ever been forced to have a call with anyone to clarify what we can and can't do for them. So no, we don't charge for initial session because it's a kind of a pay-as-you-go type model for us, which is our standard $250 for a 90-minute session. And if you would like to just clarify with us how you'd like to use that session, or if we would do something different to the standard process written all over our website, we are very happy to reply to you over email. Hope that makes sense. Are
That
we a
made
little
total
light on
sense.
the questions today?
We are light on the questions, but we've got
Okay.
some new folks joining us. So welcome to everyone who's just joined us, and let's keep those questions going, folks. We're here for 50 more minutes until 6 p.m. British summer time. Glorious British summer time, should I add, in terms of weather.
It's great. I
Um,
even have a fan going in the room with me.
there you go. See, when British people take the fan out, it means that it start pushing sort of late 20s in terms of Celsius. But yeah, it's a bit light on the questions, folks.
And you use Celsius, so I use centigrade.
Yeah, I have no idea why I
I
use
don't know
Celsius.
why that term is interchangeable. I'm going to have to Google that because I use the term centigrade, but I know other people would use Celsius, and I
I
don't know
think
why.
centigrade is what they call Celsius in the States.
Really
That's my incoming assumption. I might be wrong.
interesting.
Hmm.
Well, there we go.
There you go.
But
Come
do you
to
know
day
that?
one
Do you know
careers.
my? Do you know my shortcut hack to how you translate centigrade or Celsius into Fahrenheit and back again?
No, I do not. Can you share it with me?
Yes,
Because I
it's
always
super,
struggle.
super simple. It's a revelation to most people. So to go from centigrade/Celsius to Fahrenheit, you double it and add 30.
Oh wow.
Right? And then obviously for the reverse, you take away 30 and you chop it in half. And it's pretty accurate in terms of a translation.
That is
So there you go.
so cool.
Life hack, simple math that you can do in your head.
Simple math that you can do in your head. Come to day one careers for Amazon interview advice and
And very simple
mathematics.
math.
Yeah,
Very,
exactly.
very simple math.
Meanwhile, I think Clark managed to ask us another question. Do you want to take
Okay,
that
sure.
one?
But I'm actually quite curious about the little profile pic that Clark has there. Oh, it's a little heart. I
There's
do
a
this
little
with my
heart.
daughter all the time. You're not a K-pop fan, are you, Clark? My daughter's a big K-pop fan, and this is like what it's all about. All right. So are you able to assist in finding the right level career with Amazon based on someone's experience and previous interview process? Um, mm, it, I- mm, it would depend on the role, if I'm honest with you, Clark. So I could probably have a good fist of it for a number of roles, but there would be other roles that I would have no clue. So if you were an acoustics engineer, or if you were some kind of random security professional, facilities professional, possibly not, because it's quite role specific. Yevgeny, what do you think? Would you be able to do it for absolutely any role across any career?
No, not really. I think if it's a career path that I am familiar with, because based on someone's experience and previous interview process, I would certainly I'd certainly have a look. So if you want if you want to send us your more extended question and your resume to support at day1.careers, I'm happy to have a look. Whether anything useful will
Will come
actually
from
come
it,
out of
yes,
it,
is
it
questionable.
remains to be seen. But feel free to give it a try. All right. So now, now I'm being told. Can you hear me actually?
Yep, I hear you.
And I can hear you too. So
Does everybody else hear us other than Lata?
I had a mic issue very early on in the session, which I fixed, and I've got confirmation from folks that I was audible. So I think it's still
But
fine.
Clark heard me because he heard the reference to K-pop.
Yeah, exactly. So it should work fine. Okay, so let me take this new question here. So I have my round of discussion in 2 days. The technical slash domain rounds. Should I be prepared as extensively as I would be for the loop? A round of discussion. So this sounds like an interview stage round of discussion. Have you heard about anything like this, Gigi?
I have never heard of anything called a round of discussion.
Is
No,
that phone screen?
I've never heard of anything that is technically called a round of discussion.
Right.
So
So
can't comment.
Lata, let's do it this way. So Gigi, myself, we've never heard about anything that's called a round of discussion. So do you mind telling us, just maybe post it in the chat box, what this round of discussion is? Is this maybe the way that you're calling your initial interview with Amazon before the loop, which would normally be called a phone screen? Maybe they've renamed it and it's now a round of discussion. It's something that we missed. Who knows? But let us know what it is, and then hopefully we can come back to your question. And do you want to take the next one?
Okay. Sonali. Okay. You're being interviewed. I think I recognize Sonali as well from previous weeks. Welcome back. That makes me sound like I just spend all of my time staring at people's profile pictures. I promise you I don't. I just have quite a good photographic memory for images. Anyway, interviewed for an SD2 role for a specific team. To increase my chances, should I ask to be considered for an SDE1 or other teams, or recruiters will consider it by default? Yeah, they'll consider it by default. So if they feel that you aren't raising the bar at SDE2, but you do raise the bar at SDE1, they will potentially either see if they can find another role for you that's an SDE1, or if they don't have any other roles for an SDE1, they will simply tell you they are not inclined, and then you can feel free to apply again. It's not the recruiter's role to find you another role. So if too many roles here. If the team happens to have an SDE1 position open, or they're connected to other people that they know have SDE1s open, they will, if they feel that you're bar raising at SDE1, see if they can put you into that space. But if you fail to raise the bar at SDE2 and they do not have any SDE1 vacancies in their team themselves or in their peripheral vision, they're not going to run around hunting for one for you. I wouldn't recommend, and Yevgeny, I'll definitely take your input from this one personally. I wouldn't recommend telling anyone who you are going into an interview with that if I'm not good enough for this role, I will accept a more junior role. I think that that's probably not a strong strategy to enter into an interview process with. I think you go in on the assumption that they are considering you for that level role. And then if you aren't appropriate for that level role and they have access to other roles around them, then they will automatically do that by default. But they're not going to hunt around the entire organization for an SDE1 role simply because they feel that you could potentially raise the bar at SDE1. What do you think, Yevgeny? Would you go into an interview situation kind of volunteering a downgrade?
No, No, I wouldn't. I would do exactly what you've suggested. I think for SDEs, chances are there will be SDE ones available somewhere, and if the recruiter is, if the recruiter likes you, or even if the team, most importantly, likes you, then they might want to find you an SDU one role. But again, it's driven by the needs and their awareness of whether there are any other roles are open. But yeah, I wouldn't go into saying I'm gonna take an SD one role.
Okay. Do you
Okay,
want to
I'm gonna.
pick the next one?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, here's a question from Abdulaziz. And the question is, I have a phone interview with Amazon as a facility engineer tomorrow. What should I expect, and why is the duration of the interview 90 minutes long? I have 7 years of experience as a facility engineer. Um, So, if this is a phone interview, you can expect essentially anything. And when I say anything, I don't mean it's going to be completely random, but phone interviews at Amazon aren't as predictable as the loop or behavioral rounds are. So, it sounds to me, and again, this is my wild, wild, wild guess, that the reason why they decided to do a 90-minute phone interview with you is because they probably want to cover some leadership principles questions, some why Amazon questions, some tell me about yourself questions, and some questions about the technical or functional nature of your job. I can't see any reason why they would want to extend that interview from what I think usually tends to be around 45 to 60 minutes to 90 minutes. Now, it also gives you a great opportunity to ask them questions because I bet they're going to leave some time for you to ask questions at the end. And so these are the everything that I have just listed. Why Amazon? Tell me about yourself. Leadership principles questions and um, um, some Q&A time at the end is typically what you can expect in the phone screen, and also some functional technical questions. But I'd be very keen to hear Gigi's hypothesis. What do you think is going on with that 90-minute timing?
Yeah, I mean, it has to be a mix of some kind of functional testing as well as behavioral testing. 90 minutes is a very, very long period of time to have as a phone screen, not just for the candidate, but also for the interviewer. That's a bit of a marathon to spend with one person all in one block. Um, so, yeah, I would definitely expect it to be a combination of functional and technical. The question is whether there's some practical functional in there as well. Although quite how you would deploy practical functional testing for a facilities engineer, I'm not sure. I think the best thing to do, I know it says tomorrow, but reach out to your recruiter. I would, and I'd say, wow, this is 90 minutes, looking forward to it, but would love some sense of how this 90 minutes breaks down. The worst they can say is, I can't tell you, but I don't see any reason why they wouldn't tell you how it breaks down. That's what I would do.
Makes sense. Do you want to take the
Mm,
next one?
yeah. Okay. Phone screening tomorrow for an L5 role as a policy manager. What would we suggest is the most critical leadership principle? And also, do I think technical questions will be the bulk of my question? Well, I'm going to start with I don't know what a policy manager job looks like. I think Evgeny probably started before I arrived explaining to you all that there are thousands, tens of thousands of different jobs in Amazon, and we are not experts on exactly what every single one of those jobs entails and therefore what the key leadership principles are. And I have no idea what a policy manager actually does. So here's my suggestion to you. In order to identify the most critical leadership principles, you have three possible steps that I can recommend to you. The first is, and I know it says it tomorrow, so it might be a bit late now, to reach out to your recruiter and ask your recruiter to tell you what the key leadership principles are for the role. I'd say your odds are about 50-50. Sometimes people get a nice old full list, and sometimes people are told they can't be told. So don't know why, but that's the way it is. Second pathway that you have is if you head back to the YouTube channel, there is a playlist on the YouTube channel called Leadership Principle Deconstruction, I believe. And there are two videos there of me live on YouTube, bit like this, doing real-time deconstructions of job descriptions that people are sharing with me. And I literally look through it line by line by line, and I highlight for you what language I'm looking at and what leadership principle I'm applying to that language. So go and watch that video, see if you can get a sense of how I do what I do and replicate it for yourself on your own job description. Third thing you can do is if you decide that you would like some help, I offer a paid service where I will do that for you. And if you're interested in that, you can just head to our website, day1.careers, and you'll find in the nav bar at the top that a link to that service that I can do for you. Which reminds me, I have to email a candidate to tell them that I have just finished the one that I did for them this morning, which I forgot to do. So thank you for reminding me, Bacola. Really appreciate that. Okay, dropping this one back in. Oh, we've got SR71 is back.
SR71 is back.
SR71 is back. Cool.
And the question is, so if someone has 15 plus years of work experience, what are the chances of landing an interview with Amazon? Is it true that age and years of experience is a big factor with Amazon? No, age isn't a big factor, at least not officially. I mean, to what degree the age is a factor really depends on who's interviewing you and their biases. No one can tell you for sure that someone that's interviewing you will not be expressing some sort of ageism. We're all, humans, fallen humans in a fallen world. But Amazon, when you get into Amazon and you start taking all the interview trainings and you realize what Amazon stands for as a business, you would quickly understand that ageism doesn't have any place at Amazon in terms of their North Star, right? But obviously, none of us can give you guarantees for any individual interviewers. The years of experience on its own is beginning to disappear from job descriptions, and we see it as it depends on the region, obviously, but we see more and more job descriptions where the actual years of experience is beginning to disappear. Previously, years of experience was being used by some recruiters and by some hiring managers to have a ballpark in terms of the kind of seniority that is required. Um, uh, I've seen candidates who would have had more years of experience and fewer years of experience being hired in roles. So it's always been used as a ballpark. It's now disappearing, but it has served. I don't know with what level of, I guess, effectiveness as a kind of ballpark for
Proxy, yeah.
seniority. I don't know what's your experience been, Gigi, with age and years of experience, tenure.
So, I mean, I can honestly say I've never had a conversation about how old somebody was in a debrief. And that reflects your point, Yevgeny, about it is not policy. And there's literally no way anyone would have that conversation in debrief without being told that there is no place for that conversation in debrief. So I have never had a conversation about someone's age. Now, there's going to be some cultural differences across the globe. So my main debriefs were Europe and in the US. I think I did one or two for Japan. You know, it's a massive organization, but SR17, I think you're from the US anyway, 71. So I think you're from the US. So let's put the US slant on it. I can certainly say in any debrief that I did for a hire in the US, I have never had a conversation about how old somebody was. I can also tell you that when I was hired at Amazon, I had 20 years of experience when I was hired at Amazon, and that was what, I suppose 8 years ago now. So if you're just looking for a single use case to disprove that theory, then here I am, because I joined at Amazon when I was 40. So I guess I'm proof that that isn't a major barrier, although we all know that sample size of one is a very dangerous thing. But I think we can leave it there. We've got no evidence to prove it is. And the only evidence to prove it isn't is that it's not formal policy. And I have a proof that I've never seen it and I didn't experience that myself.
Fair enough.
Shall
Let's
we
move on.
move on? I pick the next one. Okay, David. Hey, David. You received an email from an Amazon recruiter. I answered accepting the phone interview. She hasn't responded to you yet. Yeah, it happens, David. Recruiters get busy. So, recruiters on average are probably running about 30 recs, so 30 different jobs at any point in time. So, they've got an enormous amount of workload, and that includes communicating with all of those 30 people backwards and forwards, communicating with all the hiring managers that are hiring those 30 people, being in meetings with their own teams about their own processes and their own metrics, etc., etc. So they carry a very, very heavy load, and I know sometimes they have to just make a rather brutal decision to tools down on certain recs so that they can proceed with certain other recs. So my only advice is follow up politely with emails maybe every 2 or 3 days or so, just to say I'm still interested and updating your availability if anything about your availability has changed. And if you want to try a little slightly left field approach, you can always try and reach out to them on LinkedIn, because all Amazon recruiters are on LinkedIn more or less. So you can always reach out on LinkedIn and say, hi, sorry to approach you on this channel, just wanted to make sure that there was another potential way of surfacing my interest to you for the job, and you'll find an email from me in your inbox. I know it can be frustrating, but you just kind of have to persist politely. Do you want to pick the next one, Evgeny?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So here's a question from Fikresi
I'm
Lazi.
Yeah, I mean yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Um,
obviously not a name meant to be written to be pronounced by a Russian or an English person.
no, please correct me because, and again, if you guys don't know, the other thing that Day One Careers does, in addition to interview coaching for Amazon, is butchering names that are unfamiliar with
Yes,
us.
this is
So welcome
another professional service that we offer for free. We'll
for
butcher your
free.
name.
Exactly. But feel free, please do educate us how to pronounce your name. Meanwhile, let's answer your questions. For data center engineering operation technician, the loop interview. What does the loop interview consist of? And is it behavioral interview, engineering domain? Um, so the short answer to your question for me is I am reasonably sure the behavioral interview rounds or behavioral interview questions will almost certainly be a part of your loop. I've never seen a loop where behavioral interviews were not part of it, even for some of the most technically rigorously technically screened jobs like software developers and data engineers, machine learning scientists, where the technical element is enormous and enormously important for Amazon. Behavioral interviewing is always part of it. Whether your loop will be purely behavioral or a combination of behavioral and with questions about your engineering domain, I don't know. I know that, for example, for phone screens for the likes of solutions architects, they're mixed. Um, some loop questions do sometimes include domain knowledge, but your specific case is something that Amazon is in the best place to answer this question, and they should tell you. You should only go in the loop knowing exactly what kinds of interviews you're going to expect. So I would say just get in touch with your recruiter, ask him this question. There's absolutely no reason why they will not tell you the split between your behavioral interviews and or engineering domain questions in case those rounds will be there. So that would be my recommendation. Anything you'd recommend on in addition to this?
Nope, nope. Reach out and ask them. Okay, right. So let's pick the next one. Sneha. This is at least a name I know how to pronounce. Right. I was scheduled for the loop for program manager role. Okay. But I received an email from HR saying the team direction changed and they will keep me on the radar if something else comes up. Right. Okay. Does this also mean I will be locked for a certain time period? No, no, Sneha, it doesn't. It's got nothing to do with you, nothing to do with your performance. The team have just decided that they are changing direction and doing something else. So, no, no cooling off period. That was quick. Do you want to take the next one?
Yeah, sure. Okay, cool. So the next one is it's a question from Sonali. Do debris discussion. Oh, sorry,
Debrief.
debrief.
Yeah, I'd
Debrief,
say that's
yes.
debrief. Yeah.
Debrief discussion. Does debrief discussion include details of what one answered for each question? It can. It can. Whether it will, it really depends on the debrief. It depends on how much disagreement there is on whether to bring the candidate along or not. If everyone is in full agreement, the debriefs can be very, very short, and you literally just go about your
Oh,
day. There are
love
some
those.
yeah, I love those.
I
Oh, yes, the
didn't have
angels
very
debrief.
many of them, but I love
No,
them.
yes, but if there are disagreements, then disagreements include debate, and in a truth-seeking company like Amazon, debate includes reviewing and digging for data. So yes, they can go all the way to everyone's notes to see what the candidate divulged. But this is not a problem actually, and I'll tell you, I've had one example in my experience at Amazon where there was a debrief, and during one of the debriefs, one team member was quite vehemently, is that how I pronounce it? Vehemently
Vehemently.
opposed?
I would say
Vehemently.
vehemently, but that's because I've got a very
Vehemently.
I'm pretty close to
Vehemently.
RP.
No, no, no. I want to learn.
Vehemently.
So was vehemently opposed to bringing candidate along, and the bar raiser wanted to understand that team member's position in more detail, and said, "Okay, well, let's open up the notes and see exactly what happened." We opened up the notes and realized that individual didn't take any notes, and so immediately their feedback was disqualified. So it works to your advantage in many different ways that you will never be aware of. So anyway, anything you'd add to my anecdotes, the battle
Nope.
anecdotes?
I love your anecdotes. No, nothing to add. Right. So, which one are we going to? Oh, okay. Right. Advice on internal transfer from non-tech to tech roles. So I'll give you my advice, and then Yevgeny, I don't know if you've got something to offer, but my advice would be ask that question of someone who's an expert in the tech space. If I'm being brutally honest, we'll never mislead you at day one, right? We will always tell you when we are not the right people to ask that question to. And at least speaking for myself, and I'll let Yevgeny speak for himself, I would suggest that if you were going from tech to non-tech, I would definitely talk your ear off. But going from non-tech to tech, I think you need to find someone from the tech space, is my personal opinion. Yevgeny, would you have anything to build on that?
Actually, yes. So, for specifically, when you say from non-tech to tech, there's two big sort of chunks of that. Number one is what I would say kind of the genuine non-tech to tech, which is you were a marketing manager and you want to become a software developer. So in this case, in places like Seattle and in many other, I'm sure, offices around Amazon, you will be able to see some sort of conversion programs, right? I remember last time that I visited Seattle, the posters around the non-tech to tech conversion program, where Amazon will help you sort of coach yourself or teach yourself to the level of an L4 SD1, which means that the idea is that you would retrain yourself from a non-technical qualification, and then come in at the very bottom as an SD1, as an L4 at Amazon. So that program did exist. Whether it exists right now or not, I would be surprised if it didn't exist, because companies like Amazon always need software developers. So that's, that is, it's a big leap, but if you're passionate, there shouldn't be anything stopping you. And otherwise, do indeed consult for other internal opportunities. There's one little exception to that, which is, and Gigi, you will know this, it's the PM to PMT, because T does stand for technical, but sometimes Amazon would bring you in as a PM because, for example, they don't believe that your technical domain knowledge qualifies for the PMT job code, and there's a handsome difference in compensation between these two codes at Amazon. In which case, in some cases, you can pull your technical knowledge all the way to what would be normally required in that particular team to give you that technical job code. And effectively, rather than necessarily pushing for a promotion, you would negotiate that they add the T to your job code. And I've seen people do it. I've seen this happen internally to folks who would have started in without any technical knowledge whatsoever, or with some technical knowledge, and then kind of got themselves further and further. I've seen folks who got offers to join as a PM, but then have an accelerated path to then become a PMT, which essentially it's like a closeted promotion for which you don't need to write a promo doc. So that these things might happen. So that's it.
Closeted promotion. I've never heard that term.
You get a 20% pay bump,
I
typically.
understand the concept, just the closeted promotion sounds
Clandestine.
right. Okay. So Lata. Okay. Phone screen one, Yevgeny. Instead of discussion, this is in fact a phone screen one. Should I be prepared as extensively as I would be for the loop? So I would say yes. Unless you have some specific information from your recruiter that allows you to narrow down your focus, then I think you have to be prepared for anything, which is essentially be prepared in the way that you would prepare for loop. Now, the truth is, the bar, the standard, is not adhered to in the earlier rounds as closely as it is adhered to in loop. From a policy point of view, that is not supposed to be the case. You are supposed to hold the same bar regardless of what stage a candidate is at. But I can tell you for certain that that does not happen in the real world. So it's very possible that having prepared yourself to be completely grilled at phone screen one because you're preparing as if you would prepare for loop, you're not completely grilled and it seems quite a little bit of a cakewalk. But nonetheless, you still have to prepare as if you're going to the most challenging situation, because if you under prepare because you think that you might be able to fly a little by the seat of your pants and discover that that's not the case, you would have missed out for a fault of your own rather than through no fault of your own because you put in everything that you possibly could. So it's a little bit of a choice. You can choose to put in a massive amount of work and risk that work not really having been worth it, or you can put in less work and risk not performing to the standard that they're looking for and then getting rejected through the fact that you didn't put in enough work, is my point of view. Would you add anything, Yevgeny? Oh, you're on mute.
I had a 100% agreed to top drawer response. Should we do the
Yes.
little entertainment bit before?
I love the way we call it entertaining, as if it's entertaining to anybody other than us.
Yes. Okay. Should I introduce it, and while you can queue up
Yeah,
your
yeah, you go, you go. We're
choice
gonna
of
do for we're gonna go
entertainment?
for the 30-second version today.
Oh, that's a premium. That's a luxury version, folks.
Hmm.
Right. So, what in the world are we talking about? Right. So, folks, we um, spend hours and hours and hours doing these shows for you, bringing you the best content that we believe is in the industry, with the objective of obviously running a business, but also, and it's equally as important, of making sure that the right expertise gets disseminated on YouTube. If you've ever looked for something like Amazon interview questions on Google or on YouTube, you might have stumbled on stuff, videos, blog posts that are absolutely rubbish. Like not a single, like I remember reading through fake Amazon interview question banks on Glassdoor that have questions that no one at Amazon would have ever asked. So we want to make sure that the right expertise gets to the right people. And on YouTube, it means that we need your likes. We need your likes, we need your comments, we need your subscribes. One like is roughly equal to 10 views. So if you want the right expertise to get into the right hands, so that we don't have to then work with candidates who come to us and say, yeah, unfortunately, I listened to this other expert, or I was preparing using questions that nothing even close like that was ever asked at Amazon. please help us out. It's not a huge ask, and it only takes a millisecond for you guys to click on like button. And while you're doing that, we will entertain you because Gigi have got something ready for you. It's a little short clip. It's a video, but just make sure that when you listen to this video, the volume of that video is a bit high. So if you have headphones, just pop them off a little bit or reduce the volume on your laptop.
Cue reel.
Please like the stream now. Please like the stream now. Please like the stream now. Please like the stream. 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 Like the stream.
That was really cool. And actually, the number of viewers went up as we were playing this video, which is very, very
The
different.
number of likes went up by 1. Come on, folks. You can do better than that. I can see how many likes there are. Please, lads, if you're here, just give us a little quick like. Hopefully, it's not too much of a burden to ask.
Right. I think
Right,
it's my turn, right?
next one. Cool. Coolaboola.
Okay. So the question here is, I just cleared the loop last October, and unfortunately, someone finished ahead of me. I've been called for another round one for another role. Would I need to go through the loop/process again? So from my understanding, either is possible, and it really depends on how far you went through that loop, what the decision was in that loop. So I would say just ask your recruiter because they will know whether it's a full loop or not. Gigi, anything you would know that I don't know?
Yeah, so the firm policy is that if it is less than a year since the last outcome where you got an inclined offer and the role that you're applying for is exactly the same job family at exactly the same level, they are not obliged to take you through the whole process again. You can just go to what they would call a single green light meeting and meet the hiring manager and get your offer. However, if the team feels that they would like to re-interview you from the beginning, that is entirely at their discretion and they can do that. So to Yevgeny's point, it's best to have a chat with the recruiter and just see what policy they plan to adhere to for you in your circumstances.
Beautiful. Do you want to take the next one?
Sure, we've got Clark again. Clark. 2 years ago, you had an interv. After an Amazon L6 interview 2 years ago with AWS, I was told I'm inclined, however, no other roles are available. Okay, so you got an outcome 2 years ago of inclined. Okay, that's down here. I recently reached out to the same recruiter for another position and she said she would forward my resume, but haven't heard back in 2 weeks. Any advice on your next move? Yeah, you should apply directly to the actual role that you're interested in. It's always great, obviously, to have open connections in any organization and to reach out to people that you know to say, I'm interested in this role. But it's none of their jobs to actually progress your application on a role that has nothing to do with them. So you should definitely apply directly to the role that you're interested in. And there's no reason why you shouldn't just ping that recruiter an email just to say, just to let you know, I thought I should apply directly to that role. If you could just let the recruiter know that I'm there and that you know me from the past, that would be awesome. Thank you very much. Would be my advice.
Agreed. All right, there's a question here about how many stories do you need for each of the 16 LPs? So we typically recommend between 2 and 3 stories. And when I say between, there is no between. So it's either 2 or 3, right? It's not 2.5. But it's
2.5 stories.
Yeah, 2.5 stories. That would be very nice. But yeah, it's 2 to 3 stories per leadership principle. But you know, it's very unlikely that you're going to be interviewed on all 16 leadership principles. So it's always a good advice to check if you can trim that list down by either studying the job description yourself and trying to identify keywords that map to leadership principles, or by asking your recruiter directly and see what they say. You know, in 50-50, some of them will tell you, some of them won't. So that way you can trim down your prep routine.
Cool. Should I pick up the next one?
Yes, please.
Oh, yes. Okay, this is quite a common question. Hey, Oscar, how you doing? So, is it okay to take notes when in a loop interview? For instance, if the interviewer was asking questions, it may be helpful to write down a few points. So, Oscar, yes, our advice is absolutely to, first of all, write down the question that you are being asked so that you actually remember what question you've been asked. You'd be amazed how many times I've certainly interviewed people and they kind of get halfway through the question and then or their answer, and then their eyes start to roam around and they say, "Oh, what was the question again?" Nothing worse. So definitely make sure you write down the question. There should be no issue with you taking a couple of seconds, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, even maybe up to 60, just to gather your thoughts and document a few notes for yourself. I would generally say warn the interviewer that that's what you're doing. So before you start answering the question, just to let you know, I'm just going to spend a couple of seconds writing down the question and just gathering my thoughts before I open my mouth. I want to make sure that I'm clear what it is I want to say before I start speaking, and just let them know that's what you're going to do. Don't do as my brother, who I was on the phone to yesterday, described to me. Just another little anecdote for you. My brother is I don't know what he's a solution architect. How do I not even know what my brother does? He's kind of a director solutions architecture at a big bank in Switzerland. Or he's not in Switzerland, it's a Swiss bank. And he was telling me that he was in an interview with a candidate who just literally was writing everything that he was saying. And every time they had any type of conversation, the candidate was typing up my brother's words, and he found it very discombobulating. So don't do that. It was probably funnier when my brother told it, but my brother's so much funnier than me anyway. Mom, yes, Spencer is funnier than me. My mum always watches these. Write down the question, write down a couple of bullet points for what you want to say, but just tee up your interviewer so that they know that's what you're doing, and then it's a little bit less of a shock when you actually go ahead and do it. But yeah, there should be no issue with using notes. It's not a memory test. It's an interview that's supposed to there to gather data about you, about your career history.
Cool. All right, next one. I love this question. I've read it before. It's really, really cool. So, hey guys, any advice on going to negotiations? Here are the inputs. Considering A, you don't have any knowledge about the salary range for your non-technical role, and B, considering that you've been unemployed for about 7 months. So, for the kind of risking being called pedantic, I would say, well, research the ranges for the role you're applying to. Why don't you know the ranges for the role
But
that you're
sometimes it
applying
is hard, Yevgeny. To be fair, there are quite a few countries where it's just not easy to get hold of that information. Mainland Europe,
Fine.
it's really hard.
Fine. Let's assume there's zero information about the ranges that that the role commands. What I would say is try to benchmark that role, the title of that role, versus, for example, the title of the role in some other company where you might know what the range is. Because if you're in the industry, maybe you know some friends or relatives that work in that particular area. And if it's Amazon versus, let's say, a company that's not part of the big tech group, maybe add something on top, because Amazon typically tries to aim their total compensation at when I was there to kind of, the top 25th centile, not the salary, but the total compensation all in. What that translates into, without being totally scientific, right, for the purposes of just doing kind of a rough estimate in terms of what the range could be, is if you take a non-big tech company versus Amazon, you can expect that compensation will be pound for pound, level to level, right? That it will be higher. So that's one hack that I can think about. Then if you're completely out of absolutely anything, just take your last salary that you were on and add some sort of very, very, very ambitious number to it.
Yeah.
Just do this from all sides, and then just add a very ambitious number on top and see what happens. You know why? Because Even if your number is very, very, very ambitious, they're not going to pull the offer out in case you respond, in case you want to negotiate in good faith. They're not going to say, "Oh, sorry, that's too high. We will no longer offer you the job." And actually, if you share that very ambitious number with them at the very start of your interview journey, because sometimes they will ask you before they even invite you into interviews, what's your expectations. Be ambitious, get the number in there. In fact, don't even give them the range, right? Because when you give a range to someone, you'll always give them the incentive to go at the very bottom of that range, right? I've never seen a company that had, if a company had an option to offer you anything between 110 and $150,000, and you said I'd be happy with something between 150 to 100 to $150,000, the company would always, almost always, will offer you 115, right? So just have a number that is ambitious, and see what they say. Maybe they will reveal the range to you during these conversations. It might be possible, but otherwise, I don't have any other hacks. Just be ambitious. And last thing is, you mentioned that you've been unemployed for 7 months. I understand that your the urgency on your side is higher than the urgency on the Amazon side. The good thing for you is that if you negotiate in good faith, Amazon will not take the offer away from you. So I would say still negotiate. Anything you would add, Gigi?
Nope, it's perfect. Okay, I'm just going to pick this one for Oscar again. So, Oscar, thanks for answering your question. You are more than welcome. How many questions can a product marketing manager expect during the loop interview? I learned I have to come up with 18 to 20 stories. So I would say 18 to 20 questions is probably not an unreasonable expectation for a product marketing manager. That's an L. Well, I would expect that to be an L5 role. There might be some rare instances of L4s in those types of roles, but it's pretty rare. So I would assume that's an L5. L5s, I would expect, given the complexity of the average story told by an L5, and assuming that you've got a 60-minute interview for each interview, and assuming that you have, actually, you'll probably have four interviews as an L5, somewhere between 4 or 5. I would say that's a good range. So I would expect to get through somewhere between 3 to 4 questions with an L5, sometimes up to 5 if their answers are a bit thin per interview. So I would take an average of, let's say, 3.5, seeing as we were splitting the difference, multiply it by the number of interviewers you have, Oscar. Again, I'm not sure if it's 4 or 5, and that's the number of questions that you should at least be prepared to be able to answer. Now, whether you use now we get into the difference between situations and stories. So that's the number of questions you might face. That doesn't mean to say that you have to have 20 unique situations to be able to go through. We like to use specific terminology at Day One Careers: situations versus stories. Situations is the kind of the basic origins of what's happened to you, and the story is how you then go about detailing what happened to you and the focus that you put on the specific behaviors that happened in that situation. So what you can do is, if you can't get to 20 unique situations, what you can do is you can take a single situation and turn it into 2 different stories. So those 2 different stories have to focus on very different aspects of that situation, leaning into very different leadership principles. I like to use the example of a hypothetical situation where there is a account manager for Amazon ads who, let's say, has a very unhappy customer because they promised them a certain amount of impressions and those impressions have failed to deliver. That candidate could possibly turn that situation into 2 different stories. One version of the story could be all about the analysis that they did to try and understand what has gone wrong with that campaign. And that would be a dive deep story, all about digging into the data, uncovering all of the metrics, speaking to different people about what's happened, blah, blah, blah. And they would have that as a dive deep story. The other version of that situation, which they could turn into another story, could be an earned trust story. And they could talk all about how the trust was broken with the customer and how hard they worked to rebuild that trust, taking the feedback on board, being totally open and honest about their failures in the situation, blah, blah, blah. So you can increase the number of stories that you have by taking single situations and breaking them into multiple stories. You just don't want to do that too many times, because if the truth is you've only actually got 4 or 5 core situations that you've managed to convert into 15 to 20 stories, the likelihood is your interviewer is just going to think this person's a little bit of a one trick pony. They've only got a handful of really high performance situations and they've just managed to spin them in many different ways. Okay, do you want to pick the next one, Evgeny?
Yeah. So here's the one from Byaktri Byaktri
They're really pulling them out for you
Byaktri
today, aren't they, Evgeny?
Ranjan. Byaktri Ranjan. There.
Yaktri Ranjan.
I think look, Byaktri Ranjan, tell us if we pronounce your name correctly or not. Otherwise, teach us how to pronounce it. So the question is, how do I ensure that I'm hitting the bar raiser expectation for the questions, as I'm using so many different examples with and high impact answers? Sometimes phone interview expectations are unknown. I think it's like there's just many different questions inside one question. And so, how do you ensure that you're hitting the bar raiser expectation because you have so many different questions? There is no way for you to ensure. There's no guarantee. There's no magic way to ensure that specifically for the bar raiser that you will be raising the bar and meeting their expectations, because there's a debrief. And during debrief, everyone discusses the candidate and what they've shared during the interview, and people change their votes and their minds during the debrief one way or the other way. So the only strategy that actually makes sense is not to save your best stories for the bar raiser, but to spread them all across the loop. And if that's what you're doing, and maybe this is what you mean by saying, as I'm using so many different examples and high impact answers, if that's what you're doing, then that is the right way to do it. Because when the bar raiser, the hiring manager, and the rest of the team that was interviewing you get together for a debrief, then, for example, if the bar raiser or someone else is not inclined, there will be a discussion and they might change their mind and their vote. And then in terms of sometimes phone interview expectations are unknown, well, I don't know what question that is, but the only thing that I would say to you is that um, yes, phone screens are a bit more random than loop interviews, but in, I'd say, 7 cases out of 10, you can expect why Amazon, tell me about yourself, or walk me through your resume, some functional questions, and some leadership principles, behavioral interview questions. Anything you would add, Gigi?
No, I mean your point about you're never going to know whether you're hitting someone's expectations. Yevgeny and I know the interview process inside out and back to front. We know, in theory, exactly what you need to put into your answer and what they're looking for in your answer. However, there's this crazy variable called humans in there. And unfortunately, that introduces a level of unpredictability in every single interaction. So the only thing you can do is just your very best. Don't hold anything back ever. Put everything you can on the table. And then at least if you fall short of their expectations, it will not be through any fault of your own. Okay, so Evgeny, should we give the free giveaway then?
Yeah, I can put the banner up and you can start
Okay.
chatting.
All right, folks. So we are at the end of our session for today. And yes, there is chicken for dinner, Evgeny. um, you'd be
Wouldn't
the
expect
one day
anything
I
else.
say there isn't. Yeah, exactly. You'd like, what's happening in Gigi's household? So obviously, we do all of this great stuff for you, and it's our absolute pleasure. But we also have a whole bunch of stuff that we are very, very happy to give you for free. And you can head to this URL here, and you can find a ton of free stuff. I'll try and rattle through it really quickly, but I would not leave, or you'll be sorry that you do. First thing that we give you is what we call the Amazon Interview Tool Pack. That's basically an enormous list of what we call plausible Amazon interview questions that you can use to practice for your interviews. They're not the exact Amazon interview question bank. We can't give that to you for contractual reasons, but we obviously understand the leadership principles inside out and back to front, and therefore we've created our own list of there's loads of stuff on the web. It's terrible in many cases. In many cases, there's good stuff scattered in with terrible stuff. Blog sites seem to copy each other's blogs on these things, and you just get the same rubbish list that perpetuates across multiple sites. And because it's across multiple sites, it's not because it's true, it's just because they can't be bothered to come up with their own. So ours is, I think, the best and most comprehensive list out there. So please go and take that. The other thing that we offer you for free is a little taster course of our Amazon interview success system that we have just polished up and relaunched, which I'll talk about very, very briefly. But a little taster of that course we are giving to you for free. This taster focuses on the customer obsession leadership principle, whereas the rest of the course covers all 16 of them. We just want to give you a way of tasting how we go about teaching leadership principles. We have a very specific learning model that unique to us. We developed it here at Day One Careers, and it helps you see the different, what we call, facets of the leadership principle, which will help you identify the right types of situations to pick from your career history. We then talk to you about what they're actually looking for in customer obsession, and that helps you convert that situation into an actual story. Incredibly powerful, incredibly useful. Again, we absolutely convinced we have the best learning model around Amazon interview preparation when it comes to the leadership principles that is out there. So please take that, give it a go. I'm sure you'll love it. I have no doubt. And then the third thing that we have to give you is access to our community. So if you take out either of those first two things, it entitles you to access to our Heartbeat community. So that means you can get together with other people who are interviewing for Amazon. You can do mock interviews with them. But the best thing about that community is it gives you access to a GPT model that we have custom trained on basically all of the content that is in the YouTube channel. So if you have specific questions, rather than spending hours and hours watching extensive videos of obviously my gorgeous face, you don't have to do that anymore. You can just come to our community, ask Andy, who is our chat bot, and Andy will attempt to answer your question for you based on all of that insight that we have for free on the YouTube channel. I think that's it, Yevgeny. I don't think I've missed anything.
We've recently included a demo of one of our AI tools that comes packaged inside the Amazon interview success system, which is our AI story bank. Essentially, we've together. So we used to offer just courses. We now offer courses and AI tools bundled together, so you get theory and practice. And one of those tools that we've just built, which is part of the Amazon interview success system, is the AI story bank. Essentially, it's an online database where you can store all of your answers, pre-prepared answers for the leadership principles interviews. You can review them with our AI story review service, and you can also have all of your interview ready summaries prepared for you. So all of the bullet points with all of the data, so that those memory aids. Some people use Post-its, some people use Google Sheets or whiteboards behind your screen. You can just use the AI story bank. Anyway, it gives you a demo. You can watch that demo and see how it works as well.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yevgeny's right. I should have focused on that. Go and check out the demo, folks. And the one amazing feature, not that it's not all amazing, of course it is, but I think the feature that you will love the most if you decide to sign up to the Amazon interview success system is our AI story review. Imagine being able to have Yevgeny or myself review your story for you. You can submit your story to this AI story review tool, and it will take all of Yevgeny and my expertise, apply it to your story, and then provide you with a PDF full of feedback on how to improve your story and enhance it for what Amazon is looking for. I don't know that there is any other tool out there at the moment that has that level of subject matter expertise that you can use. ChatGPT vanilla flavor will not do it for you, because ChatGPT does not know what we know. So we'll leave that with you, folks. Thank you very much for joining. And if you have interviews coming up, we wish you the very, very best of luck. And
luck.
hopefully we will see you all next week. Take
See
care.
you, next
Bye.
week. Bye.